Welcome back to another episode of the Friends of NPACE podcast. We are thrilled to have Maddie Martin with us today, and she is from the Alport Syndrome Foundation, which is a new partner that NPACE is working with as we round up 2024 and look ahead to 2025. And I've gotten to connect with Maddie and some folks at the Alport Syndrome Foundation over the past couple months, and we figured it would be a great opportunity to connect with Maddie to talk a little bit about what the foundation does and about Alport syndrome, which I think is something that not a lot of folks know about, both medical providers and the general public. So let's start there, Maddie. If you could introduce yourself to the audience and give a little bit of background on what Alport syndrome is, I think that'd be a great place to start.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. My name's Maddie Martin. I am an Alport syndrome patient. I'm also a nurse. But I was diagnosed with Alport syndrome when I was 4. Alport syndrome is a disease that primarily affects the kidneys, eyes, and ears, causing progressive hearing loss, vision damage, cataracts, etc., and most importantly, progressive kidney failure, and eventually end-stage kidney disease that results in either dialysis or transplant. Um, Alport syndrome also affects other parts of the body. In some people, it can affect the esophagus, and it can affect the aorta at times, causing aortic aneurysms. That is kind of new in our research, but I just wanted to note those as well. So it's a rare disease. We are categorized as a rare disease. Approximately under 200,000 people have it in the US. And our foundation is US based, the Alport Syndrome Foundation, but we do help an international population. And it was created in 2007 by an Alport syndrome family, a woman known as Sharon Lagas, after her brother, Paul Silver, actually passed away from Alport syndrome and the effects of Alport syndrome effects. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and about the foundation and about the disease.
Amazing. Thank you for enlightening us with that and for providing a little bit of background. Um, on a personal note, Alport syndrome is a little bit personal to me. Is one of my best friends also has it and has experienced some of the issues that come along with it and was on dialysis for a period of time and actually has had a kidney transplant that his brother-in-law actually donated to him. And so it hits close to home. So I've had the fortune of, I guess that's the word to use, of knowing about this disease and some of the impacts that it's had. And I think one thing to dive in a little bit further is what sort of things, and you said you were diagnosed at a very young age. Do you remember or recall any of the things that you were experiencing that sort of led to your diagnosis, or what has it been like if you don't, some of the things that you've experienced since then with having the condition?
So, actually, when I was 2, I don't really remember, but the story goes that my mom's cousin is a pediatric nurse, and she was changing my diaper and saw that there was blood in my urine. Um, and so, blood and protein in your urine is abnormal, as we know. So she encouraged my parents to take me to the pediatrician, and then that resulted in a specialist consultation with a nephrologist. I'm from Connecticut, so Connecticut Children's is where I went throughout my entire childhood. Um, I was treated at the age of 2 with, it was kind of categorized as glomerulonephritis. And we didn't really get an Alport syndrome diagnosis until I was 4 and had a kidney biopsy. And that gave us the actual Alport syndrome diagnosis. So since then, when I was 10, it was found that I had developed hearing loss. I was 40% deaf at the age of 10, so I was fitted with hearing aids. And then when I was 18, I had an episode of acute kidney failure. And over the next 2 years following that acute kidney failure episode, my kidneys did kind of bounce back. I basically just had like an acute kidney injury, and they did bounce back, but I was no longer able to tolerate the treatment regimen, which is an ACE inhibitor, such as an enalapril, lisinopril, or an ARB. I was on enalapril for my entire childhood. And when I was 18, after this incident of an AKI or acute kidney failure, my kidneys could no longer tolerate the dose that I was on. So I had to come off of that completely. And over the next 2 years, I progressed into end stage renal failure and ended up needing a transplant at the age of 20. So that was kind of, since then, it's been 5 years. Knock on wood, I have had no issues. I've had very minimal complications, but definitely the progression of kidney disease and dealing with that at a younger age. I mean, I was in college and nursing school when I was going through this, and that was definitely challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a tough journey, and it's one that can only be managed, I think, with medication for a period of time until, as you mentioned, you begin that dialysis treatment, or hopefully and eventually get a transplant. And you really just it spoke to what the journey was from the point of sort of finding out that you had it until the point of getting a transplant, which I want to dive into a little bit further. Once you had that acute kidney injury, and went into the renal failure phase, what was that time period like, and what was the process like of going through trying to find a donor for a kidney? Was it somebody random? Was it somebody who you were related to? And I think, I don't, not most folks, but folks do know about folks that have needed kidney transplants, and some of the miracle work that goes behind that, and the PR, if you will, that goes into
Mhm.
that. So what was that like in your specific situation?
Yeah, so I was extremely fortunate. I was only in kidney failure for about 3 months before I found a donor and got a transplant. I think the process is obviously very difficult for everybody, it's very individualized. One thing that I really did to kind of promote myself as a person who needed an organ, was I was just very open about it and really kind of blasted it on social media that this is what I needed. So I actually found my donor was my attendance secretary from high school. And I went to a very big high school of like 2,500 kids, and I I hadn't really stayed in touch with my donor, but I kind of did. But I had gone back one one time just to like visit the teachers and faculty and say hi, and visited my donor, who wasn't my donor at the time, and she had been following my journey on Facebook, because we were Facebook friends. So she had been following my journey, and I had detailed, all the things I was going through, being in kidney failure and the symptoms and the like. And she just kind of said to me very matter of factly when I went and visited, like, I'm going to get tested. And she was like, I've already told my husband I'm already going to get tested. And I was like, oh, okay. That's awesome. That's very nice of you. And so she went through the whole process, the screening process, and ended up being a match. It was between her and my mom. And the thing about Alport syndrome is it's genetic. I have a very rare kind of mutation. I actually have two mutations. It's called like digenic. And so I got one mutation for my mom and one mutation for my dad. And there wasn't enough research about it. There's still not enough research about it, and about my mutation to be able to take my mom's kidney, basically. So my nephrologist and my entire team really encouraged me to like make a decision that was best for myself. And knowing that there wasn't enough research on it, I didn't know if Alport syndrome could have like reoccurred in my mom's kidney if I had taken that. So I ended up going with the unrelated donor. We call altruistic donation. So I had an altruistic donor. She was my high school attendance secretary. She is awesome. We're still in contact to this day, and she's really great. But yeah, other than that, the journey was uh, it was quite tough being in school at the time. I was sleeping like 16 hours a day. I had no appetite. I was eating like one meal a day. Um, the kidney failure journey is really not a fun one at all. I was very fortunate that I did not have to go on dialysis because of like the turnaround of finding a donor. But many are not as lucky as I have been. Many of my friends have been on dialysis, have done peritoneal, have done hemo, and it's a very tough journey I've seen in my practice. So I actually ended up becoming a transplant nurse, and worked on my same floor where I had my transplant done. And I've saw in my practice we had a lot of dialysis access patients, and so I've seen a lot of it. I've seen a lot of the dialysis, even though I didn't have to go through it.
Yeah, it's extremely tough, and issues with the kidneys are tough to deal with because there's limited options in terms of what you can do from a medication standpoint until you might get to a point as you mentioned where they don't respond the way that you're hoping they can, and then it's dialysis or a donor, and obviously organ donations are are difficult. But the what you did is similar to what my friend did as well, and sort of broadcasting the message as far and wide as you can. And you would be surprised at how many people step up to the plate to go get tested and are willing to potentially be the donor if they're a match. So let's give a shout out to the attendance secretary at your high school
Yes.
for her amazing commitment to that. And it's amazing as well, sort of the full circle story that you told, that now that you're working in that unit at the hospital as a nurse, and getting to help folks through that situation. And I guess a follow-up question with that is, what is it like now being a healthcare provider that's walked in the same shoes as some of the patients that are coming in? I imagine that you're able to relate a little bit better, perhaps, and understand some of the things that they're going through than a regular provider isn't the proper terminology, but your primary care provider or somebody else who hasn't had the same experience, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very rewarding, I will say, being able like to having the privilege to be back in that space. And the reason why I wanted to go back into that field, obviously helping people that had, that were going through the same thing that I went through was first and foremost, but I also wanted to kind of reclaim that space and rewrite my story in a way, where I come out on top. I come out like victorious in it all. So I I will say that it can be very emotionally draining, having been there and seeing people who are a lot less fortunate than I have been, in that space with their dialysis, with their transplants. Um, but it overall has been incredibly rewarding. I've been able to connect with amazing patients, who we share, um, a level of gratitude between us that most people wouldn't be able to understand, not having been through the same thing. um, but yeah, it's been very rewarding. It's been incredible. I've met great patients, and I love to kind of be a success story for them, you know, even when those like in those really low moments, um, after in dialysis and even after transplant, I struggled myself with a lot of depression and anxiety after transplant, just not knowing how to deal with a gift so much bigger than yourself, and having that feeling of like, should how do I need to give back? How do I need to like make up for this gift that I got? Um, and I had a living donor, and I know people who have had deceased donors, and even bigger um, that's an even bigger bite to chew, having that survivor's guilt on top of it. So I worked through my survivor's guilt by talking with patients and talking with people who have been through the same experience, and being that person that they can look to say, even when I'm in my lowest moment in the hospital, if I'm dealing with a dialysis complication, if I'm dealing with a transplant complication, like I can get out of here and I can live the life that I want to live. And so it's been incredible that I've been able to do that for myself, but it's been very rewarding that other people can see me in that way. And I feel like that also changes how you see yourself as a person. Like if other people are looking to you as a model of sorts, it's been very healing for me in my own journey to be able to provide that comfort to other people.
Unbelievable personal insight there, and thank you very much for sharing that. To I'll be honest, you don't necessarily think about the after transplant sort of
Yeah.
situation and what that feels like. You sort of say, all right, like it seems to be looking, feeling better,
Mhm.
able to get back to what they want to be doing. But the fact of the matter is what you just said there. And it's multifaceted and multi-layered. But to see what you're doing and to take the baton and feel like giving back and working in that space now is something that where you're able to give back is absolutely amazing. And I'm sure the patients are very appreciative of being able to speak with somebody who can relate to them on the same sort of level and have walked in their shoes. Um, that's just spectacular. And you talked a little bit about the healthcare team that sort of managed everything as you've gone along through your process. So the majority of folks that interact and that sort of work with NPACE are primary care providers. So I'm interested to hear what your primary care provider's role was in the process of things. But then obviously you had a nephrology team, with some of the things that you dealt with before and after your transplant. Did you have any counseling services that you worked with? What's sort of been the full scale healthcare team that you've worked with in experiencing the condition?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started the things all started with my pediatrician. So my pediatrician really got the ball rolling as far as referrals to nephrology, etc. Um, my pediatrician and my now primary care provider have really acted as, um, I'm going to compare it to hospital setting because
Sure.
that's what I'm so used to. So they have really been very much like my hospitalist, like my overarching care, making sure that I'm following up with all of my specialists that I need to, making sure I'm following up with my mental health services as I need them, um, really providing that holistic care approach, which I think is so important in um, in our society today in healthcare. So my primary care provider still to this day has been like holding me down, making sure that I am, I am overall in a really good spot. Um, my my pediatric nephrologist that I saw at Connecticut Children's, The whole team there was absolutely incredible. I had my pediatric nephrologist she came in. I had one when I was younger that I don't really remember much, but my pediatric nephrologist came in when I was probably like 8, and after the last one retired, and I was with her all the way until I was like 21. And she really was the driving force behind so much of my obviously my care, but also just like very much an inspiration to me. And yeah, just very much an inspiration to me. Is an incredible person. I saw a renal dietitian at the practice as well, um, especially when I was in kidney failure because of all of the nutritional requirements then. And I also saw a licensed social worker at a kidney specific part of that team. I have seen my own separate therapist, my own separate psychiatrist throughout all of this, but the the fact that there was a social worker as part of that care team that saw, you know, kidney specific issues, that saw those patients, really was like unbelievable. It was an incredible thing to get to experience, like really overarching and holistic care there, that they made sure that I was taken care of in every aspect. My So then I transferred to adult transplant, post transplant nephrology. They have also been great. Um, I don't really see a dietitian anymore. I still have the option of seeing a social worker there. Um, Now I really kind of just I'm a little bit more removed because I'm 5 years out, so I'm a little bit more removed from my nephrology team now. But but I still am very close with my primary care provider and with, my own psychiatrist, my therapist, my audiologist because of the hearing aspect of Alport syndrome. Um, so yeah, so I think that it's really important for primary care providers specifically to make sure. It's funny because, sorry, I'm like all over the place in my
That's
thoughts, but
okay. No, this is amazing.
but it's it's been what's been great about my primary care provider that I have now is she is really involved, and I know her on a personal level as well, which also helps, but professionally she is really involved in my care still, even though it's not her specialty, even though I am a specialized patient and I require specialty services. She is still really involved in my care and is really um passionate about making sure that I am well cared for in every aspect of my health. And I feel like that as a patient is so important and makes me feel so cared for. Like I said, in the hospital, we have those like hospitalists that are your overarching, managing all aspects of your patient's care. And it's important to have a really good hospitalist because even though you have your consulting providers, um, you need somebody who is going to be looking out for the patient and making sure that the patient's needs are met and that their best interest is at heart. And so I do love my primary care provider, and shout out to all the primary care providers because you have such an important role. And just remember that even with your specialized patients, don't just push them off into their specialty. Really make sure that they're following up. Make sure that they're well in their specialized aspect because you're the one that's really the driving force.
Absolutely. I mean, you're saying everything that I tell folks that we work with day in and day out, to all of our partners that are interested in working with us, to all of the specialized providers, to all of the folks that really I interact with in my role at NPACE. sometimes they say if they're looking to specialty and targeting perhaps one of those groups, I say, yes, absolutely, and we can help you reach them. But the primary care provider's role is exactly what you just described over the last few minutes. They are the point person, they are the liaison to all of those different aspects of the healthcare team and are the one running. They're like the point guard. I'm a sports guy, so basketball. Um, but they're helping to make sure that the doors are open to all of the different resources that you need from a healthcare standpoint, and then are able to help facilitate those relationships to whether it's specific services like the social worker or a therapist, whether it's a specialist, as you mentioned, with nephrology, in the different healthcare settings that you're in, it's different folks. But as you said, the primary care provider's role in the healthcare team is exactly that. And the way that you outlined that and gave that example is tremendous. And so, to all the primary care providers listening, there couldn't be a better example of what the possibilities are for the patients that might be going through a specialized level of care, and how you can assist them. And so many of them do. And so many of them are on top of that in the way that yours was. And so, as you said, a big shout out to all of the primary care providers who make sure that's happening day in and day out. And I want to transition our conversation a little bit to a little bit more about the foundation itself. And a few things to sort of wrap things up. So, what was your first sort of interaction with the Alport Syndrome Foundation, and when did they get involved with your care, and when did you get involved with them on a volunteer professional level?
Sure. So the first time I actually came across the foundation, I remember very specifically, I was 17 years old, 18 years, I was 17, and I was in a little bit of a rebellious phase when it came to my health. Um, I was not taking my enalapril the way I should have been, really because I didn't know like what it did. I didn't really know anything about my own disease. So I just like Googled Alport syndrome. Um, when I was 17, I was on vacation somewhere and I was just like kind of angry at the world. So I was like, let me do a little bit of research. So I found the foundation, and um, actually, this is really important to know, and I don't know if I've said this. I'm the only person in my family with Alport syndrome. So even though like my parents have mutations, they're not affected. So that is like a very key part of my story, because I grew up feeling very alone in the sense that I was not understood. Um, and my parents, bless their hearts, they wanted me to have a very normal childhood, and wanted to make me feel as normal as possible. But you don't feel normal. Like when you are a chronic illness patient, you don't feel normal. So anyways, I was just Googling and I stumbled upon their website, and they had all of these like quotes and stories of other patients, and um it was very incredible to see for the first time, like, wow, there's other people out there like me. Um, so I just kind of like watched them from a distance for a little while and, monitored the website. And then when I was a senior in high school, I applied for their Paul Silver Enrichment Award, which is an incredible enrichment opportunity for 18 to 24-year-olds, that is still done every year. And so I applied for this award, and it was like a scholarship opportunity, and I got it. I got the scholarship. So that was my first kind of like dipping my toe into the foundation, and kind of seeing what they were about. And then when I was recently post transplant, I started to get in touch with a few more people involved in the organization. And I started to build friendships with them. And A lot of them were also post-transplant or like going through the process of transplant. So I started to talk to this one person that I became friends with who was working at the foundation, and him and I had, a great friendship, a great relationship, and um, he really encouraged me to become more of a peer mentor. So I started volunteering probably in 2020 as just like a peer mentor. Basically, if somebody like a young adult, you know, uh, registered for the foundation to be a free member, and was struggling, they would just be like, "Oh, hey, Maddie is, 20 and she's dealing with this same issue.
Right.
Maybe you guys could just chat." And so they would send them my way. I would just, text back and forth, or sometimes we'd FaceTime or whatever. And so that's how I really started to get involved. I um, really treasured that peer mentor role, and I loved talking with other people. And like I said, that's what really like um, gave me my own healing, my own sense of healing from my post-transplant depression and everything. So I started to do more for them. I started speaking different speaking things. I've done podcasts before. I speak at the Alport syndrome, Alport Connect events, which are like these big patient meetings that we have. So I did those virtually. They were virtual during COVID. And I just started to do like a little bit more speaking engagements. And then I went to the Alport Connect that we had in San Diego back in 2023. And I volunteered at that, doing like running the teen program and helping with all of the teen. I was like a teen facilitator. And then last December, they were like, "Oh, we're thinking about adding another staff member." And I was looking to kind of make a transition partially out of transplant. I was a little bit burnt out in that space emotionally. So I was like, "Oh, I'd be interested." And so I applied and got the position as a patient engagement coordinator. And for the last almost year, I've been working, doing transplant, but doing both. Um, but yeah, I started this patient engagement role, and it has been very rewarding to really get into a lot more of a patient advocacy space, and start working more with the foundation. It's been very great.
The foundation is absolutely spectacular, and folks can go ahead and visit alportsyndrome.org, where they can really dive into all the different areas where the Alport Syndrome Foundation can, where the mission statement, or the mission words, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, are hope, action, and support. And so, I'm looking at the website now, and you have all the information about the foundation itself, about Alport syndrome and what it is, and also resources for both patients and medical providers there. So,
Mm-hmm.
if for the providers that are listening, if you have a patient that is going through Alport syndrome and the issues related with it, the foundation is a fantastic thing and resource to offer to them. Is there anything else on the foundation that we should know about? You mentioned some events and other things going on. What should patients and providers know in terms of the foundation?
One of the best things about the foundation is that we are a patient-led foundation. So all of our staff members are patients. Most of our board of directors are also patients, or they're a parent of a patient. So really um, we really love that aspect about us, and we flaunt that aspect about us, because there are not many, we are by patients for patients, and we are very proud of that. um, we uh, we have a big, Alport Connect meeting. I believe we already had this year's, but next year, definitely look on our website for more information on that as it becomes available. We often do direct connects where we do like a little virtual Zoom almost every month. about different topics that our patients are interested in. But yeah, it's a really great foundation, and we are here really for the patients, and we have that patient experience. And we are happy to talk to medical professionals about it. We're happy to talk to other patients about it. There's really Your patients are your best source of information because they have that experience. So we are happy to talk to anybody and everybody who is looking to get more information. If you have any questions, you can email us directly at info@alportsyndrome.org. And we are happy to, one of our staff members will, or myself will be able to connect with you directly.
Spectacular. So once again, if folks have patients with Alport Syndrome Foundation, or if you potentially do yourself, this is a fantastic resource that you can dive into. And as Maddie has mentioned in her firsthand experience, having that community around you seems to have been a tremendous asset and help to you in your personal journey. And I just want to say here before we wrap up that you should give yourself a pat on the back and round of applause for, realizing the struggles and some of the things that you've endured. It certainly must have been a different kind of childhood, and certainly, you think back to the late teens and early 20 years of your life and what that is for most folks, and some of the things that you were going through during that period of time, and to be able to come out on the other side and to be as passionate as you are about this and to be giving back the way that you are is absolutely tremendous. And you deserve a lot of credit for that, and you deserve a big virtual round of applause here as
Thank
we wrap
you.
things up. You're very, very welcome. And so for those that are listening, once again, alportsyndrome.org, you can find out any information that you need regarding the condition. And Maddie mentioned herself or another staff member will be happy to get in touch. Any parting words that folks should know? I'm assuming you're all on social media as well.
Oh yeah. We're on social media. We're on Instagram. We have a Facebook support group that is only for patients. Unfortunately, no care providers there. But yeah, we're on Instagram. We're on Twitter as well. Everything is on our website. Everything will link you out there. But thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I love being able to share my story and hope to inspire somebody, whether it's medical professional or patient or otherwise. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you as well for taking some time out of your day to join us today. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Friends of NPACE podcast. And a quick reminder regarding NPACE, you can find out more information on our continuing education opportunities and resources by visiting npace.org. Our 2025 continuing education conferences are now live and available for registration. We're very hopeful. We're working with Maddie and the team at Alport Syndrome Foundation to hopefully have them be there with us at a conference in 2025. So that is in the works, and we'll certainly let folks know about that once we're able to zone in on where and when that might be. So we're looking forward to that. You can also visit learn.npace.org for any information that you need regarding online continuing education opportunities. And we too are on all the lovely social media platforms. So remember to like, subscribe, and review if you can. Maddie, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking time today, and to all the folks at the Alport Syndrome Foundation for what you do for patients and providers. A big shout out to each and every one of you for what you're doing for folks in this arena. So that will do it for this episode of the Friends of NPACE podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.